104 years ago, women were finally granted equal voting rights by the 19th Amendment. This year, with reproductive rights being challenged across the country, many believe the women's vote could decide the presidential election. Michael George has more on the women who fought for suffrage and what their descendants have to say about women's rights today. Good morning, Michael.
Dana, good morning. You know many of their names. Harriet Tubman, Ida B. Wells, Susan B. Anthony. They're the suffragists who fought tirelessly for women's voting rights. We tracked down some of their descendants, and what we found was surprising. Many of them are also fighting for equality today in their own way. Call it a coincidence or call it a family tradition.
Right here, we see a picture of Aunt Harriet, and this was found very recently, actually.
Michelle Jones Galvin is the descendant of one of the most important women in American history.
For most Americans, Harriet Tubman is this larger-than-life figure.
Yes.
You call her Aunt Harriet.
Oh, yeah, yes, we do. And by the way, what's so interesting about Aunt Harriet is that everybody in her hometown, white, black, it didn't matter, they all called her Aunt Harriet. My connection with Harriet Tubman is that my 3 times great grandmother, Sophia, was her sister.
So that would make you the great grandniece of Harriet Tubman?
It certainly does. I'm so surprised that you got that.
We met with Galvin at the Matilda Joslyn Gage Center near Syracuse, New York, named after the 19th century women's suffrage leader.
Well, now we are in the Underground Railroad room.
Part of the museum highlights Tubman's contributions. As a conductor for the Underground Railroad, she personally helped more than 70 enslaved people escape to freedom. But she also fought in the Civil War as a spy, becoming the first woman to command armed military missions in America.
Now's our time. You ready to kill the snake?
Yes! As depicted in the film Harriet.
Ready?
Can you imagine the courage it takes for anybody, let alone a woman of about 5 feet tall, to actually be in the military and be trusted to lead 3 attacks on Confederate land? I mean, that is just stunning. What most people don't know is that her father was a minister.
Galvin wrote a book with her late mother about their family history.
She really had a very close relationship with God, and her home life was the foundation of it.
She says one of Tubman's great achievements was co-founding the National Association of Colored Women in 1896, which fought for equality for the women of color who had been left out of the suffrage movement.
There was a mainstream movement, predominantly white women. We know that there were African American suffragists as well. Aunt Harriet's voice with regard to voting rights for women really spanned both of those contingents. They came together around the right to vote.
But earning the right to vote didn't happen overnight. It took suffragists more than 70 years.
Beginning with Wyoming in 1890.
First winning victories at the state level. Opponents called them radicals, bent on destroying the family unit. A 1912 New York Times editorial argued if women voted, soon they'd want to be police officers, serve on juries, or become judges. A key figure in the movement was Susan B. Anthony, president of the National Woman Suffrage Association.
My great-great-grandmother, Ann Eliza Anthony, was Susan B. Anthony's aunt.
Susan Whiting was named after her ancestor, who was determined to vote even if the law said she didn't have the right. And in 1871, that's exactly what she did.
She was famously arrested for voting before it was legal, but she never did go to jail or pay a fine.
She was issued a fine,
yeah,
but she wouldn't pay it.
But she wouldn't pay it. She never did pay it.
Today, Whiting is following in Anthony's footsteps, chairing the board of the National Women's History Museum in Washington, D.C.
What we're trying to do is educate about the women who have been significant contributors and inspire young people particularly.
Women gained the right to vote in the western states first.
Author and public historian Michelle Duster is a descendant of one of those contributors.
Ida B. Wells was my great-grandmother.
As an investigative journalist, Ida B. Wells exposed the horrors of lynching in America. She worked tirelessly to battle racism and to advocate for suffrage.
As a woman, as an African American, she had to fight on every front in order to have full citizenship.
What was the reaction to her work?
She was threatened. Her life was threatened, and she dealt with a lot of violence. She dealt with a lot of insults. People tried to discredit her, and it was not an easy thing for her to do because she was speaking out against the power structure in this country.
Duster is helping preserve Wells' legacy for future generations, writing and editing books about Wells, including a children's book. Duster helped create these murals in Chicago dedicated to suffrage.
It feels to me that you're continuing the work that she began. Do you see that connection to Ida B. Wells?
I don't know if I see it the same way some other people seem to. I feel that the similarity is that there's truth-telling.
Dateline, Washington, D.C., August 26, 1920.
In 1920, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was certified as law, the result of a hard-fought effort by figures like Susan B. Anthony, Ida B. Wells, and Harriet Tubman.
The ladies appeared at the polls on Election Day by the hundreds of thousands.
And the daughters of the suffragists say we can all learn from their sacrifice.
I think the lessons that we can learn today is what Aunt Harriet and our founding mothers would say about voting, and that is make sure that you do it. Make sure that you take your voice to the ballot box.
My big message is please vote. People worked so hard for so long to give you that opportunity.
Given what's going on in our country right now, there's a great need for people to learn about the past. Everybody needs to have their voice heard.
I think what I was so struck by sitting down with these descendants is they all took different paths in life, but there's this common thread connecting them. They all still advocate, whether it's for people of color, for women, for voting rights. They all are still advocates.
And they all said the same thing. Use that voice that our ancestors fought for. I also was thinking, we all know right away founding fathers. You name them, you list them. It is really important to remember these women from the past that have played such an important role in shaping our country.
Founding mothers, they're important too. Thank you so much.